It's finally here. After waiting countless years since the PSVR1 generation, Zero Caliber 1 has been released for the PSVR2. If Pavlov is considered to be the Counter-Strike of VR, both in terms of gameplay and quality, then Zero Caliber fits the Call of Duty bill in terms of content, just without the over $700 million budget. It comes at the right time too. This genre has been surprisingly absent on the PSVR2 platform. Strange, especially considering features like adaptive triggers on the Sense controllers that make shooters all the more fun. Is this game worth your time? Let's find out. Hey everyone, welcome to the Zero Caliber experience. I've been grinding this game over the past few days with a review copy running on a base PS5. And just to be clear before we begin, my experience with the PvP mode before launch, it was quite limited. I'd like to create a follow-up after spending some in-depth time with the online PvP mode, but for now, maybe consider this more of a solo player's perspective, given that for the most part, the servers were empty during review. As mentioned, Zero Caliber advertises itself as Call of Duty VR. Its featured game modes are practically identical to Activision's games. I mean, the content, definitely Call of Duty has a bit more quality. It includes a fully single-player campaign and co-op campaign, a zombies mode, and a classic PvP mode featuring game types like gun game, TDM, hardpoint. These modes are all accessed from a central headquarters area which holds an armory and a shooting range to test and modify guns at your own pace. I spent quite a bit of time here. Having the ability to swap weapon mods as you like in real life felt super satisfying. It allowed me to tailor each gun to my liking. Deciding whether to bring a suppressor, a tactical laser, or really anything else into my next mission brought new features that the PSVR 2 hasn't quite seen yet. But that's already been fully realized on other platforms with games like Contractors. But let's start with gunplay, the most important aspect of these sorts of games. The emphasis here is a blend of realistic gunplay and arcadey action. I think they struck the perfect balance here. It feels quite different from Pavlov in that most guns are simply easier to use. Manual reloads are present here as well, but things aren't quite as technical as they are in Pavlov. Most guns can be reloaded in a split second thanks to a couple of quality of life features like being able to pop out a used mag by smacking it with a new one. I can't even begin to describe how satisfying this was. I spent far too long doing this. I think that the simplicity here made the gunplay feel snappier, less frustrating than in Pavlov. I'm not trying to put down Pavlov's gunplay by any means. I just think that there's a completely different audience who will appreciate Zero Caliber's combat more. My biggest complaint would be the fact that the knife is placed right beside the ammunition pouch. I can chalk this one up to being a skill issue, but it was annoying nonetheless, dying during the single player campaign because I tried to jam my knife into my gun rather than a mag. Not a big deal, but options allowing different weapon holster and tactical gear placement would have been much appreciated. Now, let's talk about the biggest surprise to me in terms of gameplay. This game has parkour. I did not know this going into it. I love parkour, so you can imagine the smile on my face when I found out that I could climb almost any surface. I could also launch myself from wall to wall to gain tactical advantage and jump around with a dedicated jump button. It's nothing special, but it's serviceable enough to make me feel like some sort of super soldier, called in specifically for my athletic prowess. That's what my imagination said anyway. This led to countless memorable encounters, like hanging from the bottom of an elevator to avoid detection from enemies. Something that definitely wasn't scripted, but that the game allowed me to do. Overall, the gameplay gets a big thumbs up from me across the board. Jumping into the game modes, I spent most of my time within the single player campaign. Featuring a slew of missions, this took me between 3 to 4 hours to complete. The levels are all linear and don't feature much in terms of exploration and collectibles, aside from a few gun skins to find. I'm not sure if this was an isolated instance or not, but somehow I only managed to find one weapon skin, which was collected by picking up a hidden gun that featured a funky looking camo. There was also only one mission that I noticed that featured an optional objective. It ended up just being using a sniper rifle to shoot 4 target dummies, and this was near the end of the campaign. Basically, go into this one expecting a straightforward and simple mission-based structure. There's a story here, and it's light, but here's the general idea. Set in a war-torn United States, you play as a newly enlisted soldier, And your mission is to fight an invading terrorist faction and uncover what their true motives are. Not very unique, right? The story just doesn't really matter here. Overall, the campaign's framed as a sequence of story-driven missions leading towards an end goal of saving all of humanity, and it can be played solo or fully in co-op. Some missions are longer than others, but in general they each take between 20 to 30 minutes to complete. Most of the gameplay remains the same. You're usually fighting waves of enemies. There is one boss encounter near the end of the game, but this is an exception and not the rule. The time it takes to complete a mission would of course change depending on whether you bring a squad of friends in or not. Or maybe if you decide to bring in the AI teammates. There was also 3 difficulty options, and I decided to play on medium difficulty solo. I did find this game challenging at times, but it was just the right level of challenging. I died countless times, but for the most part, I never felt like it was the game's fault. Usually there was something that I could have done better on my end, like found better cover or utilized grenades more to take out groups of enemies. The biggest frustration I had were the blatant enemy spawn doors, where bad guys would continue to spawn on a regular interval until you took enough out. They would also spawn around corners or behind you if you pushed ahead too early, so there's no real incentive to run and gun. You're definitely rewarded for keeping your distance. I found myself switching my firing mode to semi-auto, relying on precision headshots to push forward. Speaking of rewards, Zero Caliber has a progression system. You level up by completing missions and killing enemies across all 3 game modes. These levels allow you to unlock new weapons, attachments, skins, and money, the latter being what you'll need to purchase new weaponry. If you're looking to level up fast, look no further than the campaign. I gained nearly 40 levels after completing it. Each mission grants you around 2 to 3 levels, while the multiplayer would only give me about 3/4 of a level max, even after finishing top of the leaderboard. Let's talk PvP multiplayer. Since I played this game during the review period, I found it incredibly difficult to find a lobby. I managed to quick load into a lobby with one other player, but that was incredibly short-lived. No networking issues to report though. Things felt smooth and as expected. Thankfully, the game fills empty lobbies with AI bots, so I was still able to experience the various maps and game modes. I played a variety of game types, including gun game, hardpoint, and TDM. Gun game has always been a favorite of mine, and it was no different here. Seeing that I was playing against AI, I had no problem finishing on the top of the leaderboard every single time. And here lies a bit of an issue. These AI pose little to no actual threat. They're dumb as bricks, aside from being able to locate an objective and duck behind cover. They're easy to outsmart and outflank, and couldn't possibly be mistaken for an actual player. The map variety is also great. I was super relieved when I noticed that most of the multiplayer maps were completely different than the levels featured in the single player campaign. Sure, there was reused assets, but these maps were completely redesigned with PvP in mind, featuring appropriate lanes and choke points. I did notice some general unpolish in certain areas. For instance, there were times where I would duck under a staircase to hide and would say that I need to return to the combat area. That would even happen when I'd run under certain bridges. I'm pretty sure that a 6'2" soldier isn't an abnormality on the battlefield, so I don't think my height was the issue. So here's where I'm at with the multiplayer PvP overall. Everything here is solid enough that if the PSVR2 community decides to jump into this one at launch, there's great fun to be had. The problem is, this game isn't crossplay. A sin in my eyes, especially considering how small the VR player base is today. With a great progression system, fun gameplay and game modes, the life of the PvP is totally dependent on how many people pick this one up. So I wouldn't really recommend grabbing this one if your focus is PvP alone. That is until we see what the community reaction is. I can foresee a strong couple of weeks after launch, but without crossplay, the server health is definitely uncertain. Finally, we have Zombies mode. This was my least favorite part of the 3, and feels the least thought out. Mind you, I did play this solo, and there's probably more fun to be had in co-op. Although I will say, I did like it more than Pavlov's zombie mode. COD Zombies is one of my favorite gaming experiences ever. This tries to replicate it, but I found the movement speed too slow to properly create a train of zombies, and ammo far too scarce. I was constantly looking for ammo pickups, multiple times per round. I would have preferred having unlimited ammo, at least in my pistol like the campaign does. Having co-op partners may have remedied this issue, as more players equal more guns, which equals more ammo, but that's not how I wanted to play. What's cool though is that these are mission based, so you do have something to work towards. The objectives are simple, like finding a keycard to open a new door, but it's still cool to have something more than just run around and shoot zombies. The ultimate goal is to escape each level. And although I never got far enough to achieve this, I'm definitely going to round up a squad shortly after launch to do so. There are different zombie types, including zombies who are covered in fire, and the zombies can either move by walking or full out sprinting towards you. There's also an armory system where you can get new guns for free after completely and successfully surviving a round. Every few rounds you are granted a better gun, but this still didn't solve my ammo issue. Overall, I wouldn't say this is a standout game mode, but it is nice to have alongside the single player and multiplayer. What I can say is that Zero Caliber is no slouch when it comes to content. Let's talk visuals and PSVR2 specific features. Well, the game is no looker. With smooth textures on the walls and surfaces, the graphics feel dated, especially when compared to modern VR games. The guns look great, but the environments are simple and definitely not built with powerful hardware in mind. Thankfully, things are crystal clear in the headset, and the game runs great. I couldn't pinpoint what frame rate the game ran at, but it felt incredibly smooth. If I were to guess, maybe a 90Hz native experience. I'm also happy to report that I experienced very few bugs throughout my experience. Everything I did notice, I mentioned earlier. There's a bit of strange artifacting on some of the foliage, and a bit of aliasing, but it never seemed to bother me. This just isn't the kind of game where I'm looking for a graphical masterpiece, and the smooth gameplay and clarity more than made up for the basic visuals. There's some cool environment features like changing weather depending on the map you play on, which would add water particle effects to your screen, but nothing too crazy. The best and most immersive moments were when your allies would carpet bomb an area around you, or the curated animated sequences like jumping into a moving helicopter. I wish there were more of these, but what was there felt great. Although not present during my gameplay, adaptive trigger support has been promised by the developers to come with a day 1 or maybe a week 1 patch. I'll update the description of this review once I get to see how those are, but for now, I'm not going to dock any points for those as it seems they are going to be added in the game imminently. For what it's worth, there's also B-haptic support incoming with this patch. Hopefully this includes headset rumble for explosions as well, as I didn't notice any at the time of review. Fingers crossed, but nothing mentioned thus far by the developers. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Zero Caliber. It's great to see more games like this hit the PlayStation platform to compete with the likes of Pavlov and Alvo. Only time will tell, but as it stands, I think this game is more my style. Pavlov feels higher in production value, but the addition of a single player campaign, along with the deeper zombies mode, elevates the game content-wise, and leaves me wanting to jump back in for more. Is this the best VR shooter I've played? No, but it's a damn good time, and I'm excited for the second game to be ported over by the developers. The game recently had a wishlist campaign, so the most that we'll be launching for is $27.99 USD, and if we manage to hit 10k wishlist overnight, there's a chance it's $24.99. I would recommend picking this one up at that price, especially if you have a group to play with. If you're planning on playing this game exclusively solo, there's more than enough content to keep you entertained for a couple of hours. If you're concerned about the status of finding lobbies in PvP, it might not be a bad idea to wait a day or so to see what the consensus is across the board. I wish I could say that there will be a lot of players jumping in, but without crossplay, I really don't know. But this game is perfectly solid, nothing extraordinary or new, and its visuals are quite simple, and at a time, outright archaic. But the gameplay and wealth of content more than makes up for it, especially at this price point. This is a good experience. Possibly great if the lobbies are full at launch. That's going to be all for today. My goal here was to provide you with my complete thoughts on the game and hopefully give you an idea of whether this one's for you or not. If you enjoyed listening to me blabber on about yet another VR game, please consider subscribing. Let's also talk in the comments. What's your favorite VR shooter? I'm still a huge fan of Contractor's Exfil Zone. Hopefully that one comes to PlayStation soon. But have a great day everybody, and I'll see you on the battlefield. See ya!